الحمد لله رب العالمين وأصلي وأسلم على نبينا محمد وعلى أهله وأصحابه أجمعين. أما بعد, Jewish atrocities against the Muslim Palestinian population. The Jewish nation has a long history of oppression and grievous atrocities against humanity in general, and the Muslim Palestinian population in particular. Their self-serving policies and inhuman initiatives have led to the slaughter of innocent souls and the spillage of innocent blood as a result of the escalating violence throughout the 20th century. In this view era, there has been intensification and a renewal of oppression. Presented before you are a few highlights of dark and barbaric history. The unlawful seizure of Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa, August 21, 1969. Denis Maiko, an Israeli Christian Zionist, set fire to Masjid Al-Aqsa. The fire engulfed the foundations, walls, and interior of the masjid. The fire consumed the pulpit of Salahuddin al-Ayyubi, which was used by him during his speech after the conquest of Masjid Al-Aqsa, Baytul Maqdis, and the expulsion of the Crusaders. 1980. Close to 1 ton of TNT was found near Masjid Al-Aqsa in an attempt to destroy it, but quick decisive action saved the Masjid Al-Aqsa Masjid from the sure destruction. 1984. The Special Aqsa Security Force discovered numerous Jewish terrorists hiding near Masjid Al-Aqsa, preparing explosives to demolish the masjid. The Mufti of Baytul Maqdis at the time, Sheikh Sa'aduddin al-Ilmi, said, "Had it not been for Allah's protection, not a single stone of the honored building would have remained in place." As well, during 1984, a plane was employed to bomb Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa. With Allah's grace, the plan was debunked. 1990. During the year 1990, the members of the temple trustees under the command of Rabbi Salomon invaded the Temple Mount, courtyard of Masjid Al-Aqsa. They brought with them a stone that they intended to set it in the courtyard as a cornerstone that is to be used in the erection of their intended temple. The inhabitants of Baytul Maqdis answered the call of the Imam of the Masjid when he cried out from one of the Muazzins, "Allahu Akbar," over the speaker system, calling for help. The Muslims answered the call and vanquished the enemy. Tragically, the Jewish security forces and settlers began firing live rounds into the Muslim congregation. This led to numerous deaths and hundreds being wounded. This incident later came to be known as Al-Aqsa Massacre. Since the illegal seizure of Baytul Maqdis in 1967, the Jewish nation has continuously excavated beneath Masjid Al-Aqsa, searching for any historical evidence of their so-called temple. The initial excavation began from the Moroccan section that was annexed in its entirety by the occupying forces. The excavation spreads to that which is directly beneath Masjid Al-Aqsa from numerous directions and over numerous stages. During 1986, the Jewish nation erected a small prayer hall in one of the excavated tunnels directly beneath Masjid Al-Aqsa, which was inaugurated by the now deceased former Prime Minister Bain. The excavations are still ongoing to this day. They pose a significant threat to the masjid and may lead to its collapse at any moment. Heinous massacres, murder, and maiming. The Jewish nation's attitude since it has set foot in Palestine has been one of murder, bloodletting, assassination, and summary execution and massacres. They have implemented this policy and manner to drive out the true people of the land and claim it as their own. This destructive policy dates back to the terrorists who first landed Palestine during 1948. Ever since the initial insurgents, followed by the establishment of the oppressive tyrannical Jewish state, their policy has not changed. Even after signing the peace treaty with the Palestinian Authority, there has been a constant escalation in the violence, terrorism, and destruction. The occupying forces have used all the weaponry made available to them against an armed civilian population. They have used warplanes, tanks, rockets, and light weapons. They take careful aim and shoot to kill old men, youth, women, and children. All are seen as targets that are a fair game. They make no distinction between a resistant fighter seeking to claim his right, a child, the elderly, or women. This is clearly demonstrated in their sinister past. Here are a few of many examples documenting the Jewish nation's nation's reckless regard for human life and their deprived indifference to the suffering of the civilian Palestinian population. Al-Sheikh Village Massacre, January 1, 1948. While the rest of the world awaited for the birth of New Year, a terrorist group called Al-Sheikh Village, a terrorist group entered Al-Sheikh Village to massacre its residents. On that night, around 200 Zionists armed with hand grenades and machine guns snuck into this small village 5 kilometers southeast of Haifa. The attackers entered the homes on the edges of the village and detonated hand grenades and finished off with machine guns those who survived the initial attack. There were over 600 casualties, with over 40 dead, including men, women, and children. Many of the victims were found murdered inside their own homes. Deir Yassin and Abu Shusha Village Massacre, Friday, 9th April 1948. At 4:30 a.m. on Friday, 9th April 1948, Zionists surrounded the village. Deir Yassin and Abu Shusha Village Massacre, Friday 19th April 1948. At 4:30 a.m. on Friday 19 April 1948, Zionists surrounded the village, which was overlooked by 2 Jewish settlements, Givat Shaul and Montefiore. For 2 days, Zionist terrorists killed men, women, and children, raping women and stealing their jewelry. The massacre had been executed with machine guns, grenades, and finished off with knives. Pregnant women's bellies were cut open, and babies were butchered in the hands of their helpless mothers. More than 250 people were murdered in cold blood. Of them, 25 pregnant women were bayoneted in the abdomen while still alive. Any that moved was killed. None of the animals were left alive, along with the human Muslim Palestinian population. Kibia Massacre, October 14, 1953. At 9:30 p.m., about 700 former Israeli troops attacked the border Jordan village of Kibia. Kibia Massacre, October 14, 1953. At 9:30 p.m., about 700 former Israeli troops attacked the border Jordan village of Kibia, northwest of Jerusalem. Using mortars, machine guns, rifles, and explosives, they blew up 42 houses, the local schools, and the mosque. When faced with resistance, the Jewish forces planted explosives around the village and detonated them. All those taking shelter away from the onslaught were killed or buried alive when their homes were blown up with them inside. Every man, woman, and a child found by the Jewish force was butchered. Anyone seen fleeing the scene was also gunned down. 75 innocent villagers were murdered in cold blood. The raids were ordered by Ariel Sharon, the current Prime Minister of the Jewish state. The butchery continued throughout the night and into the next day. Qalqila Village Massacre, October 10, 1956. The village of Qalqila was attacked by Zionist aggressors and Jewish settlers. The attack took place at the proverbial green line that separates the Arabic lands from the lands annexed by the Jewish in 1948. The raid was carried out by the army and specialized artillery units and dozens of weapons. The artillery struck the village for an extended period of time before the land raid commenced. More than 70 persons were murdered that day. Khan Yunus Massacre, November 3, 1956. The Zionist Jewish army carried out a massacre against homeless Palestinian refugees living in the tent enclave of Khan Yunus near Gaza. 250 casualties were documented 9 days after the first massacre of Jewish forces returned on the 12th of November 1956 and added another 275 casualties from the same refugee camp. The Zionist terrorists also murdered 1,000 Palestinian refugees in the nearby refugee camp Rafah on the same day. The Sabra and the Shatila massacre, September 15th, 18th, 1982. Sabra and Shatila are two large Palestinian refugee tent camps near Beirut. Before the massacre took place, the camps contained in excess of 90,000 Palestinian refugees. On that day, the 5th of September 1982, Jewish forces and their Lebanese pawns attacked the two camps. The mission was planned by the Jewish Forces Defense Minister, who is now the Prime Minister of the Jewish state, Ariel Sharon. The massacre claimed over 3,000 Palestinian men, women, and children. Al-Aqsa Massacre, Monday, October the 8th, 1990. On Monday, October the 8th, 1990, and a little before Salatul Duhur, members of a terrorist group called Temple Trustees, under the command of Rabbi Salmon, invaded the Temple Mount courtyard of Honad al-Masjid al-Aqsa. They brought with them a stone that they intended to set in the courtyard as a cornerstone that is to be used in the erection of their intended temple. The inhabitants of the Baitul Maqdis raised to defend the sanctity of Masjid al-Aqsa from the illegal trespass of these terrorists. This resulted in numerous confrontations between the trespassing terrorists under the auspice of Rabbi Salmon, leader of the Temple Trustees, and 5,000 Palestinians who initially came to pray the Dhuhr prayer and found themselves needed in the defense of Masjid al-Aqsa. Within moments, a large contingent of the Jewish defense force arrived. These forces are always present in large numbers near Al-Quds, sanctified area of Masjid al-Aqsa. The forces began to indiscriminately fire live rounds into the crowd of Muslims. They made no distinction between a man, woman, or a child. 21 Palestinians died. In an excess of 150 people were wounded. 270 and in excess of 150 people were wounded. 270 individuals from within and outside the masjid were incarcerated and detained. The Ibrahim Mosque Massacre, February 25, 1994. Before the faithful ended their Fajr dawn prayers in the Ibrahimi Mosque, explosion of hand grenades and the sound of assault rifles resounded within the masjid. Shrapnel and ammunition ripped through more than 350 worshippers. A Jewish terrorist by the name of Baruch Goldstein from Kirat Araba settlement massacred 61 to intern on the same worshippers inside the Ibrahim Mosque in Al-Khalil, Hebron, and about 300. Goldstone entered the masjid carrying an automatic assault rifle and an arsenal of hand grenades and ammunition. He hid behind one of the mosque pillars and waited for the believers to fall prostrate during the course of their prayer. He then began lobbing grenades and opened fire upon the prostrate Muslims. He was aided by other individuals with reloading his weapons and detonating the grenades. Goldstein began the assault, and the Jewish guards of the masjid locked the gates, barring anyone from escaping of others or escaping or others from entering, to put an end to the bloodshed and carry the victims to the nearby emergency centers and hospitals. Later, massive demonstration took the street of Palestinians, and the Zionist army responded by live ammunition, killing 23 and wounding hundreds more. Kana Massacre, April 18, 1986. On the Thursday, the 18th of April 1986, the Jewish forces fired 155 mm howitzers shelled UIFIL's Fiji Bat compound in the village of Kana, a few kilometers southeast of Tyre, Lebanon. Around 800 civilians had taken refuge at the base. These type of shells exploded before hitting the ground, so as to inflict the largest amount of casualty possible. 160 Lebanese women, children, and elderly men were massacred. This incident, these innocent defenseless individuals had taken refuge in the Fijian UN camp, seeking safety. Alas, they could not outrun the bombs that rained down upon them. An-Nafaq Massacre, September 25-28, 1986. September 1996, the Zionist government decided to inaugurate the usage of a bridge that runs parallel to the retaining wall of Masjid al-Aqsa. This decision was viewed by the Palestinian population as a provocation action that was a step closer to fulfilling the Zionist aim of destroying Masjid al-Aqsa by weakening its structure and foundation. During the period between the 25th and 28th of September 1986, clashes and strife ensued between the Palestinian demonstrators and the occupying Jewish defense forces. 70 Palestinians were murdered when the helicopters from the Jewish defense force opened fire on the demonstrators. Incarceration and torture of inmates. The Jewish nation stifles the Palestinian population and restricts their freedom through the incarceration of large numbers of the Palestinian population. Many are incarcerated as a precaution and not for a crime committed. The norm is to appear in a military court with little to no representation. In numerous cases, individuals are held without being charged with a crime, appearing in court or having a trial. This process is simply known as administrative confinement. This policy, beginning in 1967 to 2000, has led to the incarceration of more than 850,000 Palestinians. Most inmates are taken into custody during the early morning hours. Armed soldiers raid the home of the individual who is being sought out. The inmate is uncuffed, blindfolded, and beaten with strikes, kicks, clubs, and pistol whipped. He is beaten and physically abused throughout his interrogation until he confesses to that which they have accused him of. Standard interrogation techniques involve constant checking, covering the victim's head with a nylon bag, bringing on suffocation, and keeping the inmate in constant wakefulness while withholding food and water. There is constant physical abuse and regular beatings that are interrupted only by the confinement in miniature cells. Music is blared constantly for agitation. Electrical shock and near asphyxiation are regularly administered along with the climatic variations. Extreme cold and extreme heat. Cigarettes and other objects are extinguished with the skin of the inmates. The nails of the hands and feet along with the inmates' teeth are pulled out. Along with this is the unhealthy and inhumane condition that the general inmate population is exposed to. Diseases are rampant in the prison population. Skin and respiratory disease are of epidemic proportions. Emotional and psychological ailments are found in most inmates. It is rare to find an inmate leave the prison system unarmed. There were 126 documented cases of inmates dying during routine interrogation. What is baffling is that the Jewish courts in 1996 upheld torture as legal, moral lead that is in turn with the oppressive and tyrannical legislation of the Jewish government. Expulsion and annexation. The Jewish occupying force seeks the complete annexation of the blessed land of Palestinian from the Mujahid Palestinian population. They seek to purge the land and ethically cleanse it of all non-Jews. To fulfill this aim, they have resorted to massacring the Palestinian people so as to terrorize them to the point that they voluntarily depart from their homes and central lands. The occupiers foster a situation that is unbearable to withstand. Those electing to remain find great difficulty in sustaining themselves. When terrorizing the civilian population did not work, the occupiers resorted to expelling many Palestinians from their homes and relocating them on the outskirts of Lebanon or Jordan. At times, they will give those unjustly incarcerated the opinion of relocating outside Palestinian or to remain in prison. The occupiers will then state that he chooses to leave and no longer has the right of return to his homeland. The largest forced expulsion occurred in 1993. The occupiers gathered more than 400 influential Palestinian men, scholars, doctors, engineers, merchants, and gifted students. They were placed in southern Lebanon during severe winter conditions. They were left in that inhospitable climate, living in tents, struggling to survive, until they were granted the right of return to their homeland. Assassinations. Massacring thousands of Palestinians throughout the recent years has proven insufficient in quenching the murderous tendencies of the Jewish occupiers. Assassinating key Palestinian leaders and spokespersons was inaugurated into the repertoire of sanctioned acts used by the Jewish occupiers against the Palestinian population. The main aim behind the assassination was to suffocate the intellectual, political, and physical struggle of the Palestinian people. These assassinations were not limited to those residing in occupied Palestine. The Jewish Defense Forces set up a coverage tactical unit of undercover operative posing of us Arabs. The operatives mingle with Palestinian population seeking to spy, sabotage, and assassinate Palestinian activities. Numerous modes of assassination are employed, from snipers, rocket attacks, placing explosives in cars and phones, to lacing food and mixed with poison. In many cases, numerous innocent bystanders are murdered or injured in these activities. Assassinating opponents has also been a Jewish policy that escalated exponentially in the First and Second Intifada. Environmental degradation and water supply contamination. The Jewish occupiers intentionally destroyed the natural physical environment in a multitude of ways. Of the most hazardous and serious way is the storage and burial of depleted in radioactive waste in Palestinian control areas. This blatant disregard for the Palestinian people and the natural environment has led to numerous health ailments afflicting the Palestinian population. Cancer rates have soared along with other terminal illnesses that are all linked to these hazardous radioactive wastes. Further, the Jewish Defense Forces constantly and unabashedly use chemical dispersants such as tear gas to disperse crowds of children. The chemical constituents of these weapons are harmful to the respiratory system of all those who come in contact with it, especially to young maturing children and adolescents. The Jewish occupiers contaminate underground aquifers and surface bodies of water intentionally. They have poisoned numerous wells and springs in the occupied territories. As well, due to the initiatives and the lack of environmental concern, water salinity and toxicity have been exponentially. These contaminants have had a detrimental effect not only on the Palestinian population. During the year 2000, Jordan authorities investigated shipment being smuggled into Jordan for storage and burial. The shipment contained numerous and declared hazardous materials. Eventually, the shipment were returned to the originating source.